October of 2022 is a very special month for me because 10 years ago, I made the largest purchase of my life at the time on a depreciating asset. And the funny thing is, I didn't actually intend to buy this very car. No. I'm not saying I accidentally bought a car. And with that said, let's jump into the story of none other but my 2013 Acura TL. Now let's rewind way back, well before I was car shopping and even well before I was able to drive. I'm talking about elementary school days or even a little bit before that. Ever since I can remember, I always loved cars, I loved trucks. As a matter of fact, I can still remember the toy trucks I've played with. We had some wooden cars, wooden trucks. Later on in the elementary school days, into middle school, high school, even now, I played with racing games. So if you guys remember, the OG Need for Speed for PC, I got into the Need for Speed series. On the Xbox, I got into the Midnight Club 3 games. And to this day, on the PS5, I play with Gran Turismo and have lots of fun with that. I had the dream of buying and owning my own car, but at the time when I was still a student, that wasn't realistic. But fast forward some years, and when I was able to comfortably afford a car, I was thinking, okay, what kind of car should I get? Now, the first thing that popped into mind was that I wanted to switch to a manual transmission car. And everyone thought I was nuts because in the past, I've only driven automatic cars. And how do I get from automatic to manual comfortably without screwing up the manual car when I buy it, because I have very little experience. As a matter of fact, I think I had like 2 lessons of manual, one from driving school and another one was from a friend that taught me on his pickup truck. And it just wasn't a whole lot of experience for me to comfortably drive a manual car from the dealership back home. And that was one of the things I was thinking about. 2, I wanted something that was cool, right? So I wasn't thinking about the TL at first. I was thinking way back with the Fast and the Furious, I was thinking, oh, maybe something like the 350Z. And at the time, the 370Z replaced the 350Z. So I was thinking, okay, maybe I can grab a 370Z. And with the Fast and the Furious series, yes, I was one of those kids that believed danger to manifold warnings means that a panel pops off at the bottom of your car. But let's not talk about that. And then going back to the checklist, reevaluating it realistically, because this is going to be my daily driver, this is going to be my main car. I didn't think that a coupe would be a right fit, let alone a 370Z. I wanted a car that can fit more people, and that means passengers in the back, which, by the way, the 370Z didn't have seats in the back, right? This is gonna be my main car. And I thought, okay, it's time to shift my focus to a sedan. And I know, boo, sedans are not as cool as coupes, but you know, I think for my first purchase, I wanted a sedan so that I can fit more people. And that's what I'm going with. I shifted my eyes over to the entry-level luxury sedan segment that offers manual transmission. And back then, you can find that a lot easier than today. But even then, it was quite difficult because when I was car shopping, I said, okay, there's the TL, and that is the entry-level luxury division of Honda. They also have the Accord, but I'll talk about that a little bit later. Infiniti had their G37S, which is pretty cool. Audi had their A4 and their S4. BMW, I was also eyeing their 335xi, which had similar power to this. I think both of them, as a matter of fact, had 305 horsepower, all-wheel drive, 6-speed manual transmission, and 4 doors, which was putting it head-to-head. And I think the 335 might be a little bit smaller than this, but depending on what you're looking for, right? The pros and cons with each car. And I was like, okay, let's look for the TL, because I narrowed down. Eventually, I was like, I'm picking the TL. And then 2-year-old manual TLs were very hard to find. And a lot of them were out of state. So I picked up the phone, I called the dealership when I found them online. I was like, hey, I see you have a manual TL. I'm really interested in test driving it. And then there was, I think maybe like one that I actually test drove. And then all the other ones is like, I learned a little bit about it and then boom, someone snags it, right? So people that want the manual TLs know they want it and they swoop them up pretty quickly. So it was extremely difficult to car shop for a used TL back then. And then it got to the point where it's been a couple of years, I've been saving up, and I actually got to the point where I saved up enough to buy a new TL. So it wasn't that I accidentally bought a new car, it's because the used car segment, even at that time, for the manual four-door cars, it was just so hard to compete with people that are local to the area or people that just put down money right away and buy it. I actually ended up going with a new TL. So I went to the dealership, I bought the car right before it was ready. It was actually coming out from the factory. Pretty soon they were putting in the final touches. And after the car showed up at the dealership lot, my friend, my dad, and I went to Acura, picked it up. As a matter of fact, my friend drove my car home just because I didn't want to stall entering into the highway or anything like that. So a little bit embarrassing, but hey, better safe than sorry. Yeah, I was paranoid, but I took the car around in smaller roads, got more familiar with driving stick, and then eventually it worked out. That's enough of that. Let's actually start driving the car. First off, let's talk about why manual transmission. I love driving manual. When it comes to driving and learning for the very first time, I learned on an automatic car. Now, I did learn on a manual once because my driving school required all students to drive stick for one lesson, and I hated it. I was like, it's so much easier to drive automatic. Like, what's the fun in driving manual? But then it wasn't until I really learned how to drive manual where I really appreciated kind of like the art of driving. I feel like if you're driving manual, you're much more connected to the car, it's much more engaging, and it's much more fun. Now, I know some people don't really agree, and they say, well, if you're stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic, that really sucks. And yeah, I do agree up to a certain point, but I feel like the pros of driving stick outweighs those cons. And if I had to do it over again, would I buy the TL again? I don't know. And I was looking at the Accords. And one thing that was kind of odd about the Accords was that if you wanted to have a manual and a V6, you must get the coupe. At least around the 2013 era, that generation of the Accord, you couldn't get the four-door sedan with a six-cylinder engine and the manual, not that combination for some reason. It wasn't until you moved up to the TL, where the TL was based off of the Accord, where you can do something like that. And on top of that, the TL offered all-wheel drive, which is pretty sweet. I know at the time when I was doing my car research, the G37S was really close. Knowing what I know now and knowing that I would get a second pair of tires just for snow, I think I'd be more open to having the G37S. So, I don't know. What do you guys think? Heel-toe rev matching. Love it. Acura kind of did something weird. So the fourth generation TL ranges from the 2009 to 2014 models, and if you look at the 2009 cars, they're all automatic. There was no manual transmission offered in the 09 TLs, but starting in 2010 they do offer the manual transmission, and I'm so glad that they did, because you get to do stuff like this. But in all seriousness, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, and 2014 cars for the TL all offer manual transmission, and that's awesome. The 2012 to 2014 TLs have the mid-cycle refresh, so the 09 to the 2011 TLs have that big beat, the super big beat, and then they toned it down for the 2012 to 2014, probably because they heard everyone complaining about the beak. It turns out the oil consumption, that was a problem for this car, for the, I think the J37 engines. Honda has been under lawsuit for their Accords and the TLs, but for mine, I actually didn't need any major engine replacement because the level of oil consumption, or the rate of the oil consumption, wasn't meeting their threshold as abnormally high. So for me, I guess I lucked out in this sense. I didn't have to get any major rework done to the car, but I do keep an eye on the oil levels just in case it dips too low. There's a couple of other things I'd like to go over, starting with the changes to this car. Now, you may have noticed on the infotainment system, we have the library computer access and retrieval system. Yes, that's what LCAR stands for. Yes, I am a nerd. Yes, I am a Trekkie, and I also love Star Wars as well. But in this case, we have some Star Trek themes going on. And as part of the Star Trek theme, we have the door lights, which is projecting the Starfleet logo. And in case you're wondering, yes, this car runs on premium dilithium crystals. Starting from the front of the car, in terms of the engine and performance, it is bone stock. I didn't do any upgrades to the intake nor the exhaust or anything like that. So that's still the same. In terms of the grille, moving down here to the grille area, I did wrap it with a vinyl carbon fiber wrap. As a matter of fact, this is the first time I was doing that to any car. And you can see all the imperfections in the cut around the edges, but I think what I should have done was take off the bumper, unscrew the grille from it, and then once that's unbolted, then wrap all the way up to the edge, and that way it makes it a little bit better looking. But as you can see, the sun beating it over time has caused the carbon fiber pattern to fade. So eventually I'm going to have to replace this wrapping, and same thing for the back as well. I did the same thing for the back. The carbon fiber is supposed to look like the pattern that's on the inside that you saw earlier, but as you can see, that's no longer the case. For the lights, the HIDs have not been touched, so those bulbs are straight from the factory. However, I did replace the DRLs, the daytime running lights, with LED bulbs. Now, the purpose of doing that is so that I go from the yellow incandescent bulbs to a nice white LED bulb, specifically having a 5000K light being outputted whenever I use the DRLs. Now, in case you didn't know, the DRLs also doubles up as the high beams for the car, and they are the same bulb, and the specific LED bulb that I put in here can perform both functions, and that way I don't lose out on high beams should I need them. Now, moving down to these lights below here in the bumper, we have an additional set of aftermarket DRLs. These DRLs also perform the turn signal function, which means that they are switchbacks, but they're not just any switchbacks. They are dynamic turn signals, which means that when you activate the turn signal, they go from the white color to an animated amber turn signal, kind of looking like a knockoff Audi. And then heading over to the side of the car, we have the tinted windows. I believe these are 25% tint. Oh, and the wheels. We can't forget about the wheels. This is probably the category that I spent the most on when upgrading this car. And I know some of you are saying, oh, upgrade in quotes because of large wheels. They got the low profile tires that are not reliable, but let's talk about that in a little bit. But for now, the TL typically comes with 17 or 18-inch wheels from the factory, and then optionally, if you wanted the summer tire package, you can get the 19-inch wheels from the factory. But this particular car came with the all-season tires. They were the Michelin tires with the 18-inch wheels. I decided to replace these with the 20-inch wheels, and this is the NK SS05 wheels, and they are wrapped with Continental Extreme Contact DWS06 tires, which are the all-season tires. Now, I did have, before this, with the 20-inch wheel, I did have the Michelin Pilot Super Sport, which is very expensive. And let's just say I made a little mistake because 11,000 miles is not a whole lot of miles to drive on and then needing to replace the tires right afterwards. So that's a story for another time. But I'm pretty happy with these DWS06 tires. I do have a separate set of winter tires, the Bridgestone Blizzaks WS80, which I really like. It was recommended to me by a friend, and he loves it on his cars. I really like it on my car. It performs very well in the snow, and that's what I'll be switching out to in just a little bit now that winter is just around the corner. And then coming around to the back of the car, as I mentioned before, we have the vinyl carbon fiber wrap underneath the trunk lid. Eventually that needs replacing as well due to the sun fading it out. I also replaced the light bulbs for the backup light as well as the turn signal, going from the incandescent bulbs to LED. And specifically for the turn signal bulbs, I've replaced them with error-free ones. That way you don't need an extra resistor to prevent any hyperflashing from happening. Although I do have hyperflashing happening once in a blue moon. I can't explain why, but after a couple of seconds, it returns back to normal. And that concludes the story of my 2013 Acura TL. For the car, happy 10th birthday. And for you guys, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe as always. I'll see you next time. Live long and prosper.